Ignatius of Loyola's first desire was to help souls.
He believed the world has been reconciled to God, and that everything in the world has the potential to bring us closer to the end for which we were created, communion with God.
He believed that it was possible to find God in all things.
And because God is present and actively sustaining creation, Ignatius believed our search for God must begin in the world.
So, it is not God or the world. We are called always to find God in the world.
Ignatius Loyola's first desire was to help souls. His belief that God is in all things was manifested in a life lived with generosity and openness.
When we believe that God is in all things, we can't retreat into separatism and exclusivity.
Instead, we recognize the truth in another's religion, the good in another's culture.
We cannot draw boundaries around class, gender, race, religion, culture. Instead, we are drawn into solidarity with others. We are drawn into their lives and times, their joys and struggles.
Ignatius Loyola's first desire was to help souls. He asked, "How can I provide the greatest service?"
And the answer was to serve those with the greatest need.
So, he followed the incarnate God into the world, and he found himself in the margins.
Drawn into the lives of the poor, the powerless, and the voiceless. It was in helping those souls dismissed and discarded that he met the crucified Christ.
Ignatius Loyola's first desire was to help souls.
As sons and daughters of Ignatius, we are asked to provide the greatest service to those in greatest need, to follow the crucified Christ into the margins of society.
Like Ignatius, St. Peter Claver desired to help souls. So, in 1610, he followed the crucified Christ from Catalonia, Spain to Cartagena, Colombia. He followed the crucified Christ into the seaports.
He followed the crucified Christ into the hold of a ship, where they keep the goods for sale, for trade, for profit.
10,000 slaves arrived each year.
St. Peter Claver desired to help souls.
With great trepidation each time, he went into the hold of every ship that arrived in Cartagena, each holding 200, 300, 400, up to 600 human beings being stripped naked, cramped together against evil, forced into a crouched position for months, contracting dysentery and scurvy, women and children sexually abused by those in control of the ship.
Sea captains described them as filthy voyages. In the hold of every ship, Peter Claver found suffering, fear, stench, disease, and the dead and the dying.
For 44 years, every day for 44 years, he ministered to the men and the women and the children who were kidnapped, brutalized, and sold into slavery.
To mine someone else's gold, to mine someone else's silver, and to harvest someone else's crops, to make someone else rich. Men, women, and children, once human, now property, stripped of their clothes, stripped of their language, their heritage, their history, their memory, stripped of their families, stripped of their dignity.
Peter Claver's first desire was to help souls. Described as timid and lacking in self-confidence, became a daring and ingenious organizer.
He ministered to every individual in the hold, bringing cloaks, fruit, bread, water, and medicine. He didn't leave the ship until every person, every Christ crucified, had received care.
This, he said, is how we spoke to them, not with words, but with our hands and our action.
These human beings disembarked the ship naked, starved, disoriented, and so weak they couldn't stand. They were put in pens, chained together, and gawked at by crowds of fashionable men and women, then sold.
To mine someone else's gold, to mine someone else's silver, and to harvest someone else's crops, to make someone else rich.
Peter Claver's first desire was to help souls. He cared for those men, women, and children who were aged and degraded, desecrated, and displayed like farm animals at an auction. He cared for their bodies, their minds, their souls.
He gave them clothes, food, and water, consoled them, offered a human touch, and shared with them the gospel that was alive amid misery and evil.
Peter Claver's first desire was to help souls, so he spoke truth to power.
He challenged the sea captains, opposed the slave merchants, the businessmen, the plantation and mine owners, the government officials, everyone who was profiting from slave trading. Winning no friends, he asked, "What sort of a man must I be, that I cannot do a little good without causing so much confusion?"
What sort of men and women must we be? Our first desire as sons and daughters of Ignatius is to help souls.
To help souls by providing the greatest service to those in greatest need. Our first desire is to help souls. To walk with the excluded, as Ignatius did, as Peter Claver did, as many still do.
How do we take the first step in walking with the excluded?
Listen closely. Listen carefully. Listen with an open mind to what those experiencing injustice are telling you. Listen for their suffering. Listen for their need. Listen to their story. Do not presume you know what their situation is before you listen to what they have to say. Take the empathy God gifted you and listen.
Speak up in your own circles. Be the voice for those silenced, mocked, dismissed, ridiculed, or denigrated in your own social circle. Take the voice God gifted you and speak up.
Get ready to be uncomfortable. The conversation about injustice, the solution to an injustice may make you uncomfortable. It may cost you certitude, your time, a piece of your privilege. You might have to pay more for a t-shirt or a latte. Have less. Do more. Take the fortitude God gifted you and exercise it.
Amplify the voices of the oppressed. Find your platform and from it, speak truth to power. Take the courage God gifted you and raise your voice.
Act because it's the right thing to do. Don't act for show, for credit, for your college resume, to make yourself look good on social media, or for your friends. Act because it's the right thing to do. Ignatius wrote, "Love is shown more in deeds than in words." Sometimes you may not like the deed, but the doing of it is your love. Take the will, the energy, and the courage God gifted you and act.
Show up in solidarity. Live and lead with empathy. Witness, protest, liberate, heal, Join those who are suffering in their resistance of unjust structures. As Pope Francis says, we need to find ways for those who are cast aside to act, so that they become agents of a new future. Take the empathy God gave you and embrace it.
Pray for hope. Pray for love. Pray for faith. Pray for a deepening of our compassion and an increase in our resolve. Pray for those who suffer, that they find justice. Pray for those who withhold justice, that their hearts will be changed. Take the faith that God gifted you and live it.
Ignatius of Loyola's first desire was to help souls.
He knew what Peter Claver later discovered then and what remains true for us now.
Seek God in all things, and you shall find God by your side.